Hi guys, Literary Prepper back again. So this is going to be the first video in a series of videos that I'm going to do on writing techniques and bibliotherapy. So bibliotherapy, for those of you who are not familiar with the term, is basically a type of therapeutic writing, or a series of therapeutic writing skills that are sort of designed to help people to process different kinds of trauma or negative feelings, or just sort of even just day-to-day stuff that you may not actually be consciously aware of. What might be keeping you awake at night, or might be sort of causing like minor feelings of anxiety, or those sorts of things. Or even if you just want to do it just for fun because you like writing. Why am I talking to you about this on a prepping channel? Well, if there is some kind of end of the world situation, or even just something minor like a local flood or a fire or something, even if it doesn't directly affect you, it can still, you may know someone who's going through that, or it may have come really, really close to you, and even though you don't really feel like you can own that trauma because you weren't directly affected, sometimes these things, even just being aware of them, can just knock us a little bit off course. And whilst really sometimes it does seem silly to actually come out and say out loud that something that didn't directly affect you has, you can't help how you feel. So bibliotherapy is a really easy way that you can just sort of cope with some of, or help to cope with some of these things as they sort of crop up. And writing is good for all sorts of things. I mean, the more you read and the more you write, the more articulate a person you're going to become, which doesn't always become reflective in the way that I speak. I can't always pull the word that I want to out of the air, but I can write better than I speak, trust me. Anywho, so that is why I wanted to sort of talk to you about bibliotherapy, is because there's a lot of things that you can get out of it on a day-to-day basis, and if you are in a shit hits the fan situation, then you've got some coping mechanisms that you can sort of pull out of the air, whatever, to sort of help you to better sort of deal with these sorts of things, especially when you're dealing with other people, because whilst you have some kind of control over how you react to things, you can't control how other people react. So if you have these sorts of things just sort of in the back of your mind, or in a handy notebook that you can sort of pull out, and you can say, hey, how about we sit down and we take a few minutes to actually sort of talk about these sorts of things, write about these things, don't even have to read it out loud. It really can go a long way to sort of smoothing over whatever it is that's sort of a problem at the time. So things that you will need to get started: obviously a notebook. So this is an A5 notebook that I picked up from the supermarket. I think it cost me like $3, because also being a teacher as well as a writer, whenever they have back to school sales, I try to sort of jump on board and grab all of the stationery bits and pieces, because notebooks and things always come in handy. You can never have enough notebooks. I'm one of these people who likes to make written lists, even just shopping lists, because I know that I'm going to get into the supermarket and I'm going to forget something. A lot of the time it is the list, but the point is I have written one down. So yeah, do yourself a favor, and if you ever see notebooks and things on sale, then by all means go and pick them up. Sorry about that. So yeah, notebooks, always really cool. You can even pick them up if you're really fast, I've seen like notebooks as low as 40 cents when they're trying to sort of clear them out after all the back to school bits and pieces at the beginning of the year. Like, you know, it's one of those things, like, they don't have a use by date, by all means go and store them. This little guy, this is an Artline pen, and this is definitely going to be reflective of the fact that I'm a spoiled uni brat, but I love my Artline pens. I'm very, very protective of my pens, as many writing students and writers are. Very particular about the pens that I write with. Actually, yeah, I like my pens. So, pen, notebook. As with everything, you want backups of all of these things, because eventually it will run out. As much as it really sucks when you have to say goodbye to your favorite pens. I don't believe Artline pens are refillable, and even if you do have one of those fountain pens that are refillable, if we are in a situation where the stores don't have anything, then they're probably also not going to have like refills for your favorite pens, so make sure you stock up on those as well. On a side note, I made the mistake of taking home some obscure branded tea from a motel we stayed at recently. It tastes like pesticide. That was a big mistake. Anywho, so what I want to talk to you guys about today is journaling and characterization. So you've probably all come across the sort of typical teenage sort of Dear Diary format. It's like, today I walked the dog and we saw a flower, and we came home and watched TV, whatever. I find that boring, very, very boring, and most people probably do. And this whole concept of Dear Diary, today I ... I don't even know how you're supposed to sign off on those, but it's to me it's surface crap. It really is surface crap. You may look back, if you're sort of, many years out of high school and you look back on those diaries, and you might be all like, oh, hey, this is the date that we did such and such, or, whatever. Okay, cool, but, that's about all that sort of format is good for. I don't like it because it sort of implies that to be good at journaling, you have to do it every day. And not everyone has the time or remembers to do it every day. I sure didn't when I was in high school. I felt like writing a diary was something that you had to do when you were a teenage girl, and I sucked at it. I was never good at the whole diary keeping thing because my heart wasn't in it. Maybe if it's something that you're absolutely dedicated to, then it works for you. But it didn't work for me, and I know it doesn't work for a lot of other people. What did work for me when I was in high school was just keeping a whole heap of random notebooks lying around, and just if I saw something unusual, I would write a description about it, or a short poem or something. I wrote a lot of poetry when I was in high school, and it actually did really well for me because I have had things published. I am a published writer, so whilst people sort of criticize and judge teenage girls for writing stupid things like poetry, it can sort of later on lead to building on better writing skills, because you've already started that process of trying to hone in on the words that you want to use, and you sort of get better at being very selective and crafting imagery and all that jazz. So the format that I would probably more suggest if you are interested in journaling or diary writing is actually more along the lines of what Anne Frank did with like the Diary of Anne Frank. If you haven't read it, then I would definitely suggest, I would very, very strongly suggest that everyone go out and buy that book. It's if you're looking at prepping, or if you're looking at journaling or writing a diary or anything like that, it works both ways, because from a prepper perspective, it gives you a first-hand account of what it was like to actually live through one of these complete shit hits the fan type situations where they basically were forced into hiding because they were being hunted. And from a writing perspective, whilst Anne writes a relatively typical sort of adolescent diary sort of thing, she writes it to this character that she's created named Kitty. So every entry is Dear Kitty, and she usually finishes off with something like Love Anne, or -A or something like that. So she writes it more like a letter to Kitty, which I think is much more effective than just a Dear Diary sort of thing, because then it feels a lot more clinical to me anyway. So yeah, I think creating some kind of persona that you're writing to is definitely a better way to go, because it makes it a little bit more personal. The more personal you can create, the more you're going to feel like you can share. So with creating a character, people sort of look at that amazingly daunting task of how do you bring a character into being. That often, I've also taught a number of adult writing workshops on writing, things that stymie people when they're coming up to trying to write some kind of story. They get stuck on character names, and they get stuck on actual characterization. And that's something that particularly teenage boys find really difficult to wrap their heads around, is this concept of characterization. They're sort of, for particularly teenage boys, they sort of write it as, the character, we'll call him John because it's the first name that pops into my mind. He was wearing a black t-shirt and he likes football. Okay, but that doesn't actually tell us anything about John. So it really does take a lot of effort to try to work with teenage boys to try to sort of actually flesh out a character so that it looks like something that might actually make an interesting sort of person to read about. So it can be a really quick exercise that I like to do that works with all ages is just picking a random object and personifying it. So for the example that I'm going to use right now, I have a sweet potato that I got out of the fridge. You can see condensation forming on it. That's a little bit icky. So that's my character thing. I haven't named him yet. If you want to name the sweet potato, feel free to comment below. Although he's probably not going to last too much longer, so I don't know if I'd bother or not because I'm going to eat him. Alright, so on the face of it, our sweet potato. Actually, hold him up while I'm doing this. So our sweet potato. So I've actually decided my sweet potato is probably more likely to be a she by the description that I've written, although it could be a very effeminate he. So again, comment below, should my sweet potato be like a male or a female? What's its name, and is it male or female or one of the other 50 million different genders that supposedly exist? Alright, so our sweet potato is orange. Sweet potatoes try to claim a healthy lifestyle. That's actually, when you look at the statistics between white potatoes and sweet potatoes, I think it more comes down to the fact that people prefer the flavor of these guys rather than them actually legitimately being more healthy. So they claim to be healthy. It's essentially an ugly vegetable, but it tries to make itself more popular by being sweet and full of flavor. Our sweet potato likes dark places, and sometimes it can send up vines and tendrils to try to look for sunlight if you were to bury it and have it sprout. And it basically just gets invited to places because it pairs well with more attractive foods. So no one really wants the sweet potato there because it's ugly, but the foods that it goes with, other foods it goes with, are more attractive and also full of flavor. Alright, so from that basic sort of description, you can start to maybe sort of add a little bit more to it. Just be a little bit creative with these sorts of things. So the fact that our sweet potato has orange skin, I'm gonna say that it's like Donald Trump and doesn't know when to say no to tanning. It essentially tries to sort of claim a healthy lifestyle. I'm kind of envisioning my sweet potato, if it were a person, it would be that girl who is always at like the local bar or nightclub or whatever, who I say that because it likes dark places, so I'm picturing something where she's probably the girl that goes out and gets a little bit tipsy, a little bit drunk every weekend and tries to sort of make herself popular. Everyone knows her, but she's kind of like, no one really wants to take the sweet potato home as the plan A. So yeah, she's kind of everyone's friend, but kind of because she's always there and she's always convenient. So that's who my sweet potato sort of reminds me of. I've known a number of girls over the years like that, and I wouldn't have any issues talking to this particular person about any issues that I had. I wouldn't expect a particularly intelligent response back, but at least I know that my sweet potato would be happy to have a drink and talk to me about my problems. So thank you, sweet potato. So that's the kind of thing that you can do. You can just pick a random object and just sort of start to play with different ideas and bits and pieces. The other thing that it doesn't matter if you're into writing or acting or pretty much anything that involves studying people. If you just go down to your local cafe or park or whatever, get a coffee and take a notebook and a pen, obviously, and just sit there and just people watch. A lot of the time people don't actually notice that you're watching them, they just think that you're a person sitting on a bench writing. So as far as the creepy factor goes, you don't stare at people, so you don't be all like, I'm watching you, okay, you just picked up a stick, and now you're making eye contact with me, and now I should probably close my book and run because you're dialing your phone. Don't be a creeper. But if you sort of glance around, then you notice different things that people do. So some people touch their hair a lot. Some people people who are left-handed often like their hand movements are very different because everything they do is kind of a little bit awkward just because the world is basically designed for right-handed people. So left-handed people are interesting to watch. The way that they handle utensils, the way they play sports, all that kind of thing. If you're out at a restaurant, you might notice that some people do the right thing and they'll put a napkin over their lap, whereas other people want to sort of tuck it down the top of their shirt. Other people would just kind of screw it up and put it to one side. So you've got to decide, like, if your sweet potato were to have a napkin in front of them, what would your sweet potato do with that napkin? What kind of person is your sweet potato, or your cactus, or your I don't know what else is around, your I don't know, whatever object it is that you choose to sort of write about. Are they the kind of person who would just leave the napkin under the cutlery because you can't have the cutlery touching the table because you don't know who else has touched the table? Are they the kind of person who at the end of a meal will leave the napkin on the table? Do they fold it up and put it on the right hand side of their plate, the left hand side of their plate? Do they wipe their fingers in the mouth with it and screw it up into a ball and just drop it on top? Do they put it in their pocket to save for later on because it has the name of the restaurant printed on top and they want to save it as a souvenir? Do they wipe their nose with it and then put it in their pocket because they have a cold and forgot their tissues? All sorts of things. Do they put it underneath their drink because there's no coasters around and they don't like the idea of condensation on the table? So start thinking about all these sorts of things about the person that you would most trust to be able to start writing to, and then give them a name. If you have absolutely no idea about what to name your object, go online. There are many sites with baby names and all that sort of thing. You just go scrolling through and randomly hit one and come up with some obscure name that you've never heard of before. And if you don't know whether to make it a male or a female, just flip a coin, or you can make it obscure and androgynous if that makes you feel better. But yeah, it's just something to think about. So have fun with it. So that's basically the aim of most of this, is just to have fun with it. So you don't have to spend a lot of time on it. For most of these writing exercises, they'll take 5 or 10 minutes because you do better thinking when you're faster about it. Because if you give yourself an indefinite amount of time to think about it, you will put it off and put it off and put it off, and you'll get distracted. If you set yourself, I actually have an egg timer that's like 5 minutes on each side. So I use my egg timer and basically just scribble down everything that I can think of within a 5-minute period, and that's my description. And you can tweak it afterwards by all means, but just getting it out and getting it written down is the main point. So that's, yeah, have fun with that, as I said. Feel free to comment in the box below if you come up with something that you think is a brilliant sort of description of the person that you're writing to. If whatever object it is that you choose, feel free to pop anything down there. If you have any questions, pop those down there. You can also get a hold of me at theliteraryprepper@gmail.com if you didn't want to sort of publicly post your own version of the sweet potato. And as usual, like, share, subscribe. If you do subscribe, hit the little bell so that you get our future notifications. And yeah, that's what I wanted to sort of go over at this point in time. Cool. Alright, I'll talk to you guys later.